Everybody, welcome to this month of Staffing Monthly. As you know, we are out there talking to the brain trusts of the industry, the thought leaders, the people that the leaders of staffing and recruiting organizations turn to for guidance, for expertise to help them through some challenging times or help them kind of optimize opportunities they have in the marketplace to grow and succeed in this industry. And the guest I have here today is somebody that I'm actually really excited about. This is actually Mark Winter. He's someone I had a chance to meet at the Aviante Connect conference, and we just connected because we approached the market the same way. And he is a high-level executive coach, and he focuses on a lot of aspects of staffing, but he has a passion for sales and business development, which is why I feel like we connected. And with his company, WinSource, that's what he's doing to help shape the industry. So Mark, welcome to Staffing Monthly, and I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate the connection.
Hey, really quickly, man, just a level set for the people that are watching this before we jump into the actual content. Just tell me really quickly about WinSource and who do you typically work with when you're coaching and consulting?
Yeah, so we're based in the Pacific Northwest. We're based out of Tacoma, Washington. We're a small company, just a few of us, but we all have a staffing background, and that's something that'll continue with WinSource. Anyone we bring into the business will have come from staffing, will have worked a desk or carried a bag or something, right? And between us, the partners, we've got over 50 years of staffing experience. I've been in staffing industry for this is my 23rd year, 24th year, something like that. Held every sales role out there. As far as the folks that we work with staffing companies that want to grow. You know, one of the benefits of being a consultant, one of the benefits of approaching the industry this way is we get to pick and choose who our clients are. And so we don't want to work with anybody that's broken. We want to work with people that are thriving and that are excited to grow and that are passionate about the industry. So that's who we work with. Oftentimes our entry point to an organization is people in sales roles, SVP, CRO, sometimes COO or CEO, depending on the size and scope of the organization, but it's usually somebody at the executive level. And we work with frontline staff, we work with middle managers, we work with executive teams. So we go to where we can help the most.
Right on, man. Well, that's good. I think based on our audience mix, I think that you're going to have some insights that will resonate with this group of people. And to set the table for this, I want to share how turbulent or unknown the future seems to be. A funny statistic I just heard the other day is that 80% of economists say that there's a 25% chance that we're going to have a recession. And I can't really wrap my head around if that means something or not. But what I think it does mean is that no one really knows what's going on, which means we're all probably trying to figure it out together. So with the people that you work with, the ones that are in your kind of sphere of influence or your network, what are you hearing? What are the challenges that they're bringing to you or the concerns that they're looking for guidance on right now?
Well, you bring up the economy, right? And that's something that's in the back of everybody's mind, whether they're talking about it or not. Here's what I've learned. If you tell someone that there's a chance of rain, they're probably going to grab an umbrella. They're going to take some action, right? Whether there's a chance of rain or not, just because you're hearing it, you're like, well, maybe I should grab a jacket. If you tell people that there's going to be an economic impact, if we're having that conversation, people start to brace for it, knowingly or unknowingly, right? It's just muscle memory. And so I'm seeing some of that, right? I'm seeing some people that are right now, I think they're in the questioning phase. Like, is it really going to happen? What should we do? So that conversation happens. And I think that's smart. Have that conversation. But I think it's early to make really big jumps. So have the conversation, engage, have some what ifs. Seeing some of that for sure. And the question becomes not just about economics. The question becomes about, well, what's going to be the impact to the workforce? Because the workforce has gone wonky over the last few years, right? That's been crazy. What's the impact to sales and business development? I've never, my whole time in the industry, I haven't seen this many staffing companies being bought and sold at one time. People are moving, they're thinking about career decisions. So there's a lot floating around out there. There's a ton floating around.
There is, and that's true. And I think that's good insight. So from your just personal opinion, how much of people hearing that there might be a recession and just taking some cautionary response to it, how much of that just cautionary response do you think actually manifests the actual recession that comes into play?
Oh, that, I don't know. I got to believe it's got some impact. Is a material impact? Probably. Um, I don't know how big of a play it is. And I think, here's the benefit that we have in staffing. So here's the benefit we have in staffing. We are a leading indicator of ups and downs. And so, and the beauty of our industry is we can make money whether things are going up and down. So if you're a staffing owner and you're thinking about a dip in the economy and you jump to where that dip's going to happen, you're going to miss out on the fruits of point A to point B, while people are thinking about shrinking their workforce or tightening up their operation or changing their processes. Those are all places that staffing can jump in and help, right? We can help them scale back. We can help them find efficiencies in their business. And so be smart about the future. Take whatever precautions you need to, but also capitalize on what's happening here. We're a leading indicator, and there's a reason for that. It's because there's opportunity out there for us.
Okay, I like that, and I also agree that we can make money in this industry whether it's going up or down. I've seen
Yeah.
that companies thrive during down times. And
Mhm.
I think that's true, right? I mean, every recession, there's generally two sides. There's the companies that do really well, and there's the companies that get crushed. Staffing is no different. And if we align ourselves with the clients that tend to do well or are more recession resistant, then we can grow with that. But you got to be deliberate about that, right?
You do. You've got to make it. Your choices impact your ability to do that. I think about at the start of COVID. One of the first things that happened at the start of COVID was a lot of staffing organizations gave up their sales team. I saw a number of our clients that they cut salespeople. Um, that's a fine decision. It's a good strategic decision when you need to do it. But here's the material impact of that. As things were starting to decline, or as people started to come back and figure out how am I going to work through this recession, so the staffing companies that made that strategic decision didn't have any customer facing people to help companies figure that out. And so what happened was companies said, well, we'll figure it out on our own. One of the ways they did that was to bring on internal recruiters. Uh, so it's cyclic, right? It's the whole thing's an ecosystem. So we can pull a thread over here, it impacts something over here. Point is, you can make these decisions that are right for your business, but you got to know the long-term and short-term effects of the business. You might save money on the front end by cutting your salespeople, but the long-term impact of that is customers now buy differently and they think about staffing differently.
That's true. And you've lost relationship building time, and
Absolutely.
one of the interesting things about the staffing industry is the relationship cycle is long, yet the buying cycle tends to be relatively short, given the
Mhm.
complexity of our relationships. So when you think about that, if you have laid off your salespeople or you stop focusing on business development efforts, you're going to say, hey, sales are going to start to go down. We got to get back into that and do more of that. You're going to have a long relationship cycle that you have to kind of reinvest in getting to know your prospects, your customers, how they buy, the solutions they need, and that definitely can have an impact on long-term revenue. That's a good point. It's a good
Huge,
point.
huge. And I don't want to give the impact that that's the main topic. I don't want to give the impression that that's the main topic of conversation out there. It's not. It is a conversation that's happening out there in the marketplace, but there's just as many other concerns like the workforce, how to manage both internal workers and our temporary workers. Recruiting is a constant struggle. Sales and business development. There's a number of organizations that are making the shift from hunting new logos to account management. You name it. I mean, the topics are endless. There's a ton of talk out there in addition to the economy.
It's true. And I know that to kind of blend economy and workforce right now, I was speaking with Tom Erb, and he shared what I thought was a really interesting insight going back to his experience with the Great Recession in 08 to 10. And he mentioned that while the staffing industry as a whole declined and it took a hit, if you were to carve out just IT stayed flat. And when the economists or the analysts that looked at that said, why is that? Why did that happen? Why was that the sector? They realized that the demand for talent was so much higher than the supply at the time, that when the recession went down, the demand line only got closer to the supply line, but it never dipped below it. Whereas with
Mhm.
the rest of the industry, the demand for talent actually went below the supply, which is why staffing overall went down, but IT stayed flat. And then he had it, and again, not any sort of guess or prognostication, but he said there's a chance, given the fact that demand for all talent across the board, pretty much every vertical, is so much higher than the supply line right now, as evidenced by 10 million job openings, right? He's like, it would have to be a pretty significant recession to bridge that gap so much that it drops below the supply line and you start to actually see a negative impact on staffing, which I thought that was an interesting take at the least.
Yeah. Yep. It's an interesting take. It's staffing has, anytime there's an economic shift or a change in the workforce, staffing has opportunity, whether that goes up or down. We tend to work with, in staffing, we tend to work with companies that have upward fluctuations in their staffing needs. They have a variable workforce model that they have peak times through the year or project-based work. We do really well in that environment. But the same is also true. I come from the industrial staffing background, and we've done a lot of work in retail where, when stores were packing up, when they were shutting down hundreds of stores across the country, we worked with companies like Gordon Brothers that were able to help those stores manage and regulate the locations that were left. That's a need, and that's not a need that a lot of staffing companies think about. Like, how do I help my client companies manage what they want to produce with less people or with a different type of workforce? And if we can start to get our heads around that stuff now, then even a decline becomes huge opportunity.
So I love that. So how does the staffing agency really insert themselves into that conversation with their client? And let me give a backdrop to that. And I don't mean to overgeneralize or over stereotype our industry, but I believe that the vast majority of staffing and recruiting firms in the United States are commoditized. And I think they're put into the commodity box. They're treated like commodities. They act like commodities, So I don't think many of them have the ability to kind of swim upstream enough, up the value stream enough to actually provide those executive level insights. So how does a staffing agency insert themselves into that conversation where they can start providing guidance to their client companies and help them be ready for whatever the economy holds?
Okay, I'm gonna throw down here.
Let's do it.
This may be a little controversial. You said that staffing companies get put in the box. I challenge that. I think we put ourselves in the box.
That's true. I agree with that.
We did this to ourselves. This whole commoditization, we taught customers that. In what other industry do people buy on markup other than commodity, right? I mean, they buy lumber, they buy coffee, they buy all that on markup. Staffing should never have been a markup play. We taught them that because it was easy for us. There is nothing else your buyers buy where the retail price is dependent on the wholesale price. That doesn't happen. We did it. So and there are other behaviors. We call them when we need something. We send them a letter when we're going to do a price increase once a year. We do a whole bunch of actions that project to our customers that we believe we're a commodity. So why would they invite us to the table? What I would challenge to staffing companies, what was the last thing that you did? What was the last selfless act you did on behalf of your customer that added value to their customer? What was the last thing? And don't tell me about sending workers, because that's table stakes. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about going above and beyond, something that's going to get you invited to the planning table when they're doing their strategic planning. Have you asked for that? Have you made that part of your pitch that we like to get in with executive teams and that we like to help with annual planning or strategic planning or thought leadership? Or have you taken the time? Do you have the resources in your account management staff to be able to offer that to your best clients? And it's not realistic to do it to everybody. There are going to be some clients that you can't afford to do that for. But as a whole, staffing doesn't do those things. And that's what puts us in the commodity box.
So I agree wholeheartedly. And that's why I said we act like a commodity. And that's why we get put there. We get put in our place. So I completely agree 100% with everything that you just said. So how do we change that? How do we change the
Uh-huh.
world, Mark?
Uh-huh. I think so. In preparation for today, you had sent me a question about what am I hearing from the clients that I work with.
Yeah.
Well, I put some thought into that, and my reply to that is what I hear and what I see are often two different things. So, so what I hear is we're getting ready to go to Staffing World next week, right? And we're gonna have a booth up there, and people will come by the booth and they'll say, "Do you have any recruiter training?" Or, "Hey, how do you get recruiters to be more personable? How do you get recruiters to make more calls? How do I get my account managers to be more focused on the goal? They seem to be a little flighty. They're super chatty, but they're not really producing anything." That's what I hear. I hear those things all the time. But then I peel back the layers, and what I see is account managers that don't actually have a target, that aren't held accountable to numbers. I see recruiters that have been given really crappy training. They've been thrown onto a phone with no expectation of branded delivery or a branded experience for their customer. It's just kind of like, do your best. And I'm all for throwing somebody in quickly and getting them ramped up quickly. But if you want to get yourself out of the commodity box, you have to add value to your customers in a special way. The thing that separates commodity from a value-based company is process. Processes are part of the branded experience. So on that recruiter front, your recruiter has to be acting like, sounding like, feeling like a different recruiter experience if you're going to reap the benefits. So the only way to get that though is through your onboarding process, right? So what I hear, what I see, two different things. Your question was, well, how do we change the world? You change the world by tuning up your process and making sure that everybody does it. If you look at all of the companies that don't break a sweat going through recessions, they're all process heavy companies. And some people that hear me say that are thinking to themselves, well, I don't like to be put in a box. Process is restrictive. I would say process is predictive. Uh,
Yes.
right? Processes are predictive, not restrictive. And that's what you're doing is you're building a predictable branded experience. And if you want to change the world, that's where you start.
When I think about restrictive, some people that are afraid of process because they don't want to be held accountable to the standards that processes can sometimes highlight. Um, they they shy away from it. They say things like being restrictive, but in reality, when it comes to business, like you want a container that holds water, right? And no process is like a colander, and that's so if
Love
you
that.
process, it's not restrictive. It's going to be free flowing out the door, and you're not going to be able to capture any of it, So that process is the framework that our businesses need to be built on.
Yeah.
So I love it. So you're transitioning right into that second half, the guidance. So let's get tactical for the last few minutes here together. Like, think about the last specific challenge around this phrase, around processes. Like, hey, Mark, we're excited. We want to grow. We've got some great people. We've done some training. We've been through your stuff, but we're just kind of stuck on this plateau, right? We just can't get to that next level. How do we do that? How do we change our processes? Walk me through how you help them identify maybe where some process deficiencies are and how to get new processes in place and trained up.
Yeah. Well, the first thing to do is take a look at what in your business touches the customer, because those are the processes that you get the biggest ROI on, right? So where do you touch the customer? Either by phone or in person or what have you. And then think about, how do we want to be known? How do we want to make that process something different? So when the customer feels it, sees it, hears it, it feels different than the competition. That's the easiest place to start. And then you don't have to change the world. You don't have to write a new process book, and you don't have to update your HRIS system. Pick three things and start doing them tomorrow and start doing them consistently. Everybody does it. So I think about easy things. For instance, Ritz-Carlton hotels. You go to Ritz-Carlton hotels, and Chick-fil-A actually both do this. When they end every engagement, they say, "My pleasure," right? Such an easy thing, but it's a branded experience. It's a note of a branded experience. That's an easy thing to do. Every meeting you set with a client, set an agenda. That's an easy thing to do, and the weight that it takes off the client and the professionalism that it builds to your to you and your company, huge, super easy. We're not talking rocket science here, just simple, consistent things that we agree that everyone's going to do. Pick 3 a quarter. If you did that, imagine the change in process over the course of a year.
It'd be huge.
Huge.
It'd be huge. And I think that's, so I think what you hit on the head there is that most people don't get started because it's like they don't know how to push all the rocks up the hill.
That's
right.
right.
And they don't. So how do you have a process or a method for picking 3? I know you say just pick 3, right? But like when you've not done this and you're not an expert and there's a million things, like how do you really decide what are the 3 best to pick? Do you try to pick the ones that are going to have the biggest impact, the ones that are going to be easy wins? Like how do you guide that?
So starts with your customer. So where do you touch your customer? You look at those interactions first and you say to yourself, what can we do that's going to make us stand out? Because, you got 3, 4, 5 other staffing companies knocking on the same door, sitting in the same seat, asking the same questions. Well, what can you do that's going to make yourself stand out? That's spot number 1. Spot number 2 is the outward projection of what we tell people we do. Value, you call it value prop, you can call it your mission statement, whatever it is for your organization. Get that dialed in, get everybody on the same song. So this is what we do, this is why we do it, this is how we do it. So and then obviously you have to have processes around it to support it, right? Can't just make it up. But you gotta but getting people to I use the analogy of if I'm sitting next to you on a plane and I say, so what do you do? Can you give me a 1-liner, 2-liner answer that's going to stand out, that's going to make you stand out from the competition, and get clear with the entire staff. Hey, every time somebody asks us, what is it you do here? You're going to have that. We're going to say that response. That's marketing, really, for you're changing a marketing process when you do that. So go ahead. I see you want to.
I was going to say, and you know what's the most amazing thing about that right there, Mark, is not only are you marketing and creating a branded experience that's kind of outward facing, you also have an amazing opportunity in there to align the core values of the company with who you are, right? Because ultimately, when you think about the big fancy missions and visions that sit on plaques and boardrooms and entryways and all that stuff that no one can really recite, it's all just basically like window dressing, right? And it's like, but the reality is a mission and vision should be something that is true to what you do, and it should be the answer to what do you do. So if you actually directly align it to that, and it's something actionable and simple that people can remember and they can believe in, and it truly answers the question, what do you do? Not only are you making it a marketable branded experience that's better than your competitors, you're aligning it with the core of who you are as a company. And that creates a vertical alignment that is just the underpinning for a healthy culture, right?
Huge. Absolutely. I love the tie back to the values. You're absolutely right. So number 1, have a process that impacts your customer. Number 2, make sure you know what to say to people who are prospective customers or how you represent yourself in the marketplace. The third one I would say that has one of the biggest impacts, and this is more internal, is have a process around getting to yes. There's a book that we teach a negotiations class out of called Getting to Yes. It's a William Ury book. And I love that phrase, get to yes, because it denotes like getting to yes is going to take some work. Well, what is that work? What's the process around that work? If a client calls and they want something unorthodox, or we have an idea that we want to put into place, how do I do that? Who do I talk to? Is there an internal escalation process? Do I have some freedoms to make some decisions on my own? So if you have some kind of process around internal decision making that makes it easy for you and your company to do business with your client, that's huge. There's 3 areas to start with: customer facing, marketing facing, and internal. If you had one process change or one process update in each one of those areas each quarter, be enormous impact over a year.
I love it, man. I love it. That is huge. That's good stuff, man. I'm grateful for it. Awesome and grateful for your time here today. I think that's a natural spot to land this plane here. And I am sure, I was literally taking notes, and there's so many good things that I want to share out of this. I'm sure the people watching this can take things away and apply to your business. Very tactical. For those that are out there listening and they're like, wow, this Mark guy, man, he's got it going on. How do they reach out to you other than going and seeing your booth at Staffing World?
Yeah, come see us at Staffing World. WinSourcegroup.com is the website. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, all the usual places. So look for the bald guy on social media. Come find me, and we'll talk.
That's awesome. Mark, man, again, grateful to be connected and be in your network. And I appreciate you coming out and sharing your knowledge and experience with the Staffing Monthly audience. And until next time.
Thanks.